Hello, welcome back. I'm so glad that you're back, and we are continuing our journey with our Crochet Master Series, or our Beginner Series, if you will. And today we are going to learn how to do the single crochet stitch. So we're going to go over a few things that we did in the previous video. So in the previous video, we learned to do a slip knot and the chain. So let's go ahead and go over that really quick, just in case you forgot or haven't been practicing. So the way I like to do my slip knots are just like this, as you can see. I have the tail up at the top. I pinch it with my index finger and my thumb to create kind of a loop. So I separated my tail from my working yarn. As you can see here, tail is up here, working yarn is below. And all I do is I put that loop on my index finger and simply twist my hand just like that. And then I pinch the working yarn. As you can see, I kind of move that little twist out of the way, pinch the working yarn, pull it through, and that is a slip knot. Place that slip knot on your hook, and now we are ready to start a chain stitch. So for this little mini project, we are going to chain up 15 chains, just to make it real simple. And you'll see why we do 15. So in some patterns, you're going to see chain 14 plus 1. So that plus 1 that you see is indicating the turning chain. So don't get confused if you see something, a pattern that says like chain a multiple of 8 plus 1. So that is indicating those are the multiples for that particular pattern. And for the turning chain, you are going to chain 1. For the single crochet stitch, typically you will see plus 1 or chain 1 at the end of a row. So let's go ahead and chain up our stitches. So I just chained up my 15 stitches, and in case you're not sure that you have the right stitch count, always go back and count your chains. And if you remember from the previous video, in order to count your chains, you're going to count all of the little V's, or the way I like to do it, I like to look at it from the side, so that way those bumps on the back are more visible. And that way I can count it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I have the correct amount of stitches. So now let's go ahead and move on to making our first single crochet stitch. In most patterns, you'll see in the second chain from the hook, single crochet. So that basically means we are going to skip that first chain, which is closest to our hook, and we're going to go into the second chain. So this one is 1, 2. So that is the chain that we are going to be working in. And typically you are going to be working in the back of the chain. So insert your hook in the second chain from the hook. And then we are going to yarn over. So yarn over hook. Pull through that chain. And now you have 2 loops on your hook. We're going to yarn over hook once again, pull through 2 loops. And that is 1 single crochet made. And as you can see, we have the single crochet stitch right here and that chain 1 that we did not work. So let's go ahead and move on and make another stitch. So insert your hook into the next chain, yarn over hook, pull through that chain. You have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over hook, pull through 2 loops. That's your second single crochet made. Once again, insert your hook into that next stitch, yarn over hook, pull through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over hook, pull through both loops. That is 3 single crochets made. If you find yourself having trouble working into your chain, that is probably because your tension on your chain is too tight. Typically, you want your chain to be kind of loose, but not so loose that it's going to distort everything else. So what I've seen a lot of people suggest that beginners do is to work your chain with a bigger hook size and then switch to the hook size that is recommended for your pattern. So that's something to consider. So once you work your way across, we're going to count our stitches to make sure that we have the correct count. So since we did not work into that very first chain, we have just a regular chain hanging out here, and we should only have 14 single crochets. So as you can see here, the stitches of a single crochet kind of form a V. You can kind of see vertical lines here. But if you take a closer look, if I isolate one of the stitches, you can see that they have a V shape. So this is the top of our stitches, and it looks like a chain. So here's the bottom of our chain, here's the top of our single crochet. So it's good to really take a good look at your stitches so that way you understand what each stitch looks like. So when you're working them, you can kind of read your work. And, just really take a look at it so that way whenever you're working a pattern and you lose your place or something, you can just look at it and identify what the stitch is or what row you're on. That's why I kind of like to tug on my work a little bit like this, because it separates your stitches. So let's go ahead and count our stitches, and we're going to start from the side that has our loop hanging out, our working yarn, and we're going to look from the top, and we are going to count our stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that chain 1 that we left hanging out here doesn't count as a stitch. That is simply our turning chain. And you'll find some patterns that will tell you to count that first chain as a stitch. But for now, we're not going to worry about that. We're simply going to chain 1 and turn. So now we are working back across our work. Our chain 1 here is not going to count as a stitch. So we're going to go directly into that first stitch that we see. So here is our chain 1 right here. Here is our stitch. So we're going to go into that stitch. And you want to make sure that you have your V on top of your hook, just like this. So we're going to work our single crochet stitch once again. And if you're having trouble finding the next stitch, just simply look at your work and you can see 2 horizontal lines. So these horizontal lines are going to kind of give you an idea of where your next stitch is, and we're going to work in between those horizontal lines. So there's 2 horizontal lines here and 2 horizontal lines here. We're going to work right in the middle of that. So put your hook in there, and then when you look up at the top, you should have two lines or 2 yarns here that create a V. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and that is a single crochet stitch. Another way to kind of see where your stitch is just to kind of give your work a little tug, and you'll see that little hole that is created where you need to work. So once you get to the end, you might have trouble finding your last stitch. So it is a good idea to count while you're working. And I know sometimes I don't do this all the time. Believe me, I don't go back and count my stitches. So once you get pretty close to the end, just go back and count. So remember that chain 1 doesn't count. If we look at the top of our work here, you can kind of tell where the chain 1 is, which is right here. That doesn't count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I only have 12 stitches right now. So 13. So I need 1 more stitch. So if we look at the top, we can clearly see where the V is and where that chain 1 is. So work into the top of the very last stitch, and if we look here, we can see that stitch has 2 horizontal lines, and right next to it, that top one right there is where we're going to be working. And I have my V on my hook. I know sometimes I go into too much detail, but I feel like these are things that I wish I was taught whenever I was starting out, because it would have made things a lot easier. So now we're just simply going to repeat that process all over again. Chain 1, turn, work into that first stitch, and all the way across. So make sure that you are counting your stitches as you're working. And if you happen to see that your stitch count is getting either larger or smaller, that's usually an indication that you are either skipping a stitch, dropping a stitch, decreasing, increasing, all those technical terms. And usually where it happens is right here at the end. So really pay attention to these last 2 stitches, because that's what I notice with beginners. It's always at the end of their work that they're dropping a stitch. And also at the beginning, because this could be a hard stitch to find. So I'm just going to work up a swatch, and I'll be back and I will show you how to identify your rows and how many stitches you have. once I get this knot out, you'll find that this happens sometimes. So I'll be back once I complete my swatch, and I'll teach you how to identify your rows and how to count those. Okay, so here is my swatch. As you can see, it tends to want to kind of curl in on itself. That is just the nature of single crochet stitches. This is just what naturally it wants to do, but this can and will be fixed as you put your garment together or you're making your project. And it can also be fixed through blocking, which is something that we'll go through later on in the series. So for now, let's really focus on what we're looking at here. So as you can see, we have all of our single crochet stitches. I did a little extra work for you guys so that way you can distinguish your rows. I did a few rows in an alternate color, but this is what your piece should look like. It should look straight on the edges, kind of. As you can see, mine is kind of going in because I have extra fabric yarn right here because I had to carry my yarn. But that is just the nature of it. All of my stitches are there. So let's zoom in and really take a look at the anatomy of our single crochet. What we're looking at are basically the front of our single crochet and the back. Since we are turning our work, we are going to get a reversible fabric, so it's going to look very similar on both sides. So if we turn it, it's going to look very similar, except for where I put the colors in. You'll see the differences between our stitches. So just really pay attention to this right here, how it looks like a little person. And if I flip it over, you see how it changes to a little V or a heart shape. So that's the way you can kind of distinguish, you know, which side's the front, which side's the back, or which side you want to be out, visible to the public. So let's go ahead and look at our rows and look at our stitches. We can see that this row here has like a little bumpy. So there's a bumpy there. And then if we look at the next row, it kind of looks like a V, like or a U, or, you know, and it's kind of leaning just a bit. So that's the second row. And then if we jump up, it looks like a little person. That's what I like to think of it. Or an N. And it has that little horizontal bar going across it. So you know that's another row. If we jump up, it looks like a V kind of slanted over. That's another row. Continue on. It looks like a little person with that horizontal bar, another row. And you can really see the difference between our rows whenever we alternate colors. So 1 row, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you see what I'm talking about, how they look like little people? So just remember that that is a row here. So you're going to have the 2 little legs and that horizontal bar. That's 1 row. And then the next one's going to look like a V. People row, V row, people row. That's the way I kind of taught myself how to identify different rows. So whenever you're looking at it just like this, you'll be able to kind of see it and just know that you have, you know, that's a row, that's a row, that's a row. And as you move forward, don't be too hard on yourself if you can't identify it just yet. Just know that as you progress, you'll get better at seeing your rows and understanding. And sometimes it is easier to see them with certain types of yarn. So in particularly like this yarn, you can really see the different rows and what they look like on the front and the back. And you'll really see it whenever you start working in the round, the differences between the front and the back of your stitches. Here it is. So here is the single crochet stitch, and I hope this video kind of helps you identify these stitches. So just work up a swatch, see how you feel about it, get to the point where you have, all your stitches look very similar. They're going to be sisters, not twins, remember that. And just keep working up. In the next video, we'll learn some variations of this stitch and 2 variations that happen in every single stitch. So yeah, hopefully you are understanding it and my explanations aren't too long-winded. Anyways, if you think that I am talking too much, leave a comment down below and let me know so that way I can shut it down. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Happy crocheting, happy crafting. Just have a happy day. Bye.